I was sent a beautiful Montblanc Meisterstück 149 from the 1980s or early 1990s for a minor service. I'd like to take this opportunity to show you how I carry out such a maintenance job. Of course, there are different ways to do this and a variety of tools available. Everyone is free to choose their own approach. The most important thing is this. If you plan to service or repair Montblanc fountain pens yourself, always work carefully, calmly, and above all, with patience. When filling the pen, you immediately notice that the cone jumps back slightly every time. This is a pretty reliable sign that air is no longer being pushed properly through the feed. In most cases, this means that a lot of old, dried ink has built up inside, and that's exactly what we need to remove. Modern Meisterstück models have 2 assembly slots in the piston mechanism. This distinguishes them from many vintage fountain pens, which often had only a small hole in the mechanism used for removal. Meisterstück 149 models from the 1960s didn't have any slots at all, as the mechanism was press-fitted at the time. With the correct tool, however, disassembly here is straightforward. The remaining parts of the mechanism can simply be unscrewed. Fortunately, the spindle is undamaged and the seal is still in good condition, so a thorough cleaning and fresh lubrication are all that's needed. In this model, the heart of the mechanism is still made from a combination of brass and plastic. Later on, Montblanc switched to a fully brass construction. This was likely done because it was easier and more efficient to manufacture, allowing certain production steps to be eliminated. The cap is secured with a simple slotted screw. Sometimes, however, you're unlucky and this screw is practically glued in place by old ink. In such cases, the cap should definitely be cleaned thoroughly before attempting to unscrew it to avoid damage. The nib unit is removed using the appropriate tool. On models from the 1950s through the late 1990s, the assembly slots were positioned above and below the nib, as you can see here. From the late 1990s onward, the slots were placed below the nib. This has the major advantage of significantly reducing the risk of scratching or damaging the nib during disassembly. If you want to be extra cautious, you can also protect the nib with a bit of tape. The nib and feed are then knocked out using the good old knockout block. This is the only way to clean the feed completely and reliably. All parts are carefully cleaned with water. Some components were additionally treated in an ultrasonic bath off camera. A significant amount of old ink had accumulated inside the feed and in the threads of the barrel, and this needed to be removed thoroughly. Now that all traces of old ink have been removed, we can reassemble the fountain pen. First, I apply a small amount of grease to the spindle so it will operate smoothly and reliably later on. It's important to be very sparing here. Too much grease can cause the spindle to become stiff or even jam. When assembling the mechanism, I first screw the cone in partway and then install the seal. Everything must be adjusted so that the cone sits flush and the piston can travel its full range. It's completely normal to need a few attempts until everything fits perfectly. Next, I apply a tiny amount of grease to the seal, really just the bare minimum. We definitely don't want a lump of grease inside the piston chamber. After that, the complete mechanism is screwed back into the barrel using the proper tool. Now we move on to the nib unit. The nib is placed onto the feet and aligned carefully. On this model, correct orientation is especially important. Inside the feet housing, there is a small recess on one side that is designed specifically for the nib. If the unit is inserted incorrectly, the housing can be damaged or the pen may later leak ink. I then sealed the threads with a bit of sealing wax. Alternatively, silicone grease or other sealing compounds are often used. The key point is that the material must be acid-free and not attack the plastic. Which product you choose is ultimately up to you. The grip section is now aligned at the appropriate contact points and carefully pushed onto the barrel. Then we screw in the fully assembled nib unit using the special tool. Here, less is more. The unit should not be over-tightened, as the small collar on the feet housing can otherwise break quite easily. Fortunately, assembling the cap is very simple. The clip and cap top are reattached to the cap using the slotted screw. I lightly polished all parts beforehand, but I've left that step out of the video. With that, the Montblanc Meisterstück 149 is fully serviced. As you've seen, this kind of maintenance can be done quite well with the right tools, some know-how and above all patience. I'm showing only my personal workflow here. This is not meant to be a complete tutorial. Every fountain pen, especially antique ones, has its own quirks. Material fatigue isn't always immediately visible and something can always break. So be careful. Or better yet, entrust your favorite writing instruments to a repair professional you trust.